Hello again, everyone. I hope you're all doing really well and are ready to navigate what looks like another interesting week for the markets. In this video, I'm revisiting the stock short squeeze of Vinco Ventures, ticker symbol BBIG or BB, and having a look at the financials for the upcoming complex series of mergers and acquisitions and spin-offs for the company that is set to be voted on at the October 14 shareholder meeting. This is quite a complex transaction, which Vinco Ventures has actually been quite vague about and involves a lot of moving parts, as well as other entities outside and within Vinco Ventures, including Lomotive, Zash, Immersive, PPE, Brickell, and ZVV Media Partners, and we'll also see the forming of a new separately listed entity in Crypto. It's a corporate move that is much anticipated and generating a lot of excitement, and I hope I can shed some more light onto what is going on with the whole situation from a financial perspective. So let's get into all this. So to start with, we can see that the downward trend in the stock unfortunately continued for BBIG last week, seemingly on the back of the much lower trading volume. However, it is worth keeping in mind that there were some complex macro events which may have also played a role for the company's poor stock performance last week. The stock did, however, remove itself from the series of lower lows and lower highs that we were looking at last week when it started to take a more sideways trajectory. Because of this downward movement, a lot of our legacy short positions are going to be impacted over here. However, due to the moderately supported rally that occurred late on Friday, the stock may have been able to catch out some of the more recent shorting action. Updating the charts, we can see that the bulk of our remaining distressed short positions are coming from pre-September. Now, more or less everything that was caught up in the rally's early days has been released. This new blue rectangle catches new potential positions that could be squeezed if Friday's late momentum is able to carry into this new week of trading. Now, when comparing the state of the short squeeze to this time last week, we can see there has been a general downtrend for BBIG in this regard. It is still notably the third best short squeeze candidate on Fintel, but there has been a drop to the overall percentage of the float being shorted from 33 to 25%, and the important short to borrow fee, as this is what puts pressure on shorts to cover. This has reduced down to 25% from 48%, so not good signs, but given the slow price trend down last week, this is not altogether surprising. So in terms of the short squeeze potential, there is definitely still something there. I think a lot of players are hedging bets as they don't know what to expect following the 14th of October shareholder meeting and the all-important vote. I for one have also had my doubts around this, particularly when it comes to the amount of warrants at various prices that are being potentially executed as a result of this meeting. So reading through the proxy voter information release from Vinco Ventures, I've tried to pull apart the main source of all the company's change that is to be voted on, that being proposal 4. As you can see, there are 7 lots of warrants that are all tied together for the issue of securities at various prices. In all, passing proposal 4, which is basically what is going to execute the complex series of mergers, acquisitions, and maybe even a prerequisite for the Cryptide stock dividend, is going to increase the existing share float by 134 million more shares and bring into Vinco Ventures books assets and liabilities with a net value of $598 million. Of which will include $491 million of cash. The average price in net assets being paid for these new stocks is $4.46. However, this is not taking into account forward earnings capacity. This is kind of the tangible book value of the assets. In relation to what this means for Vinco Ventures, well, it was no secret that these deals represented a large growth of Vinco Ventures as a business. The 134 million new shares that will be created through the warrants being executed is almost double the amount of shares that are already floated, that being 80 million shares. But when you look at the net assets behind these shares, the existing shares are not as attractive as what is coming into the company, with BBIG actually being in a negative equity position of approximately 80 cents per share. So it's the existing shares that will dilute the tangible book value of the incoming new shares to $2.49 each, which is an excellent result for existing shareholders. However, if all items that are being voted on in the meeting are approved, including management compensation, and then you factor in the costs of the transactions that are being paid for with equity and cash, BBIG is basically creating another 32 million shares out of company assets to cover all of the expenses. This will have a further dilution effect on the stock, bringing it down to a tangible book value of $2.16, which if you are currently a shareholder is still a very pleasing result when you consider that the net asset value of your shares are negative 80 cents at the moment, yet they trade at $6.32. Now, what does that mean for the value of the stock? Well, based on the current tangible book value, BBIG currently trades at 8.9 times its book value, which is probably quite high. However, to put that in perspective, Amazon currently trades at 17.5 times its book value. Not that Amazon is a comparable business, but it demonstrates the fact that stocks can go a lot higher in terms of net assets versus stock price. It is hard to find a company that is similar to Vinco Ventures to make this sort of comparison, as they have carved out several niches. Anyway, if this current stock valuing metric were to be applied to the new expanded entities, it would imply a stock price of about $19.22, which is pretty attractive given the current share price. However, it is also likely that 8.9 is too high for the share currently, in part due to the short squeeze. Pre-short squeeze, the multiple was more like 3 times the asset value, which would mean the new shares are more likely to be worth $6.48 in these terms, which is pretty close to the current share price of $6.32. Again though, this is not taking into account forward earning expectations of all the new assets that Vinco Ventures will now control. Also, one final point, the last set of warrants that were to be issued in proposal 4 are at $9 each, which does reflect a decent upside on the current stock price and perhaps gives some insider indication on where they think the stock should be priced after this deal. On another note, none of these comments are taking into account the loss of assets that will occur due to the Cryptide dividend spin-off, as we don't really know what assets and the values of those assets that are going into this new company. Also, these observations only take into account the information being voted on in Proposal 4 and not the effects of the other 4 proposals, of which Proposal 3 and 5 will have some further material effect on the stock, but not to anywhere near the significance as Proposal 4. Of course, this is all general information and is not advice. I'm just trying to paint a bit of a picture over what effects all of this will have on the company in terms of diluting net assets, which I initially feared when I first saw all of the warrants in Proposal 4 about a fortnight ago. This will actually be a decent improvement for the stock. This is actually reassuring for me in terms of the assets that the expanded entity will have, and of which much of is going to actually be in cash. So for me personally, my position is currently about 20% in the hole at the moment, but I'm actually not too worried now after sifting through all of these numbers. Of course, I've only looked at some broad elements of the deal, but in my opinion, I think there is room to be optimistic about the stock in the longer term, and the current price could indeed be representative of an attractive buying point. Not that I'm advising you to do so, because there is every chance that there could be a gross overselling of the stock post shareholder meeting. In terms of the short squeeze effort, theoretically the pressure will remain the same, as the new shares are all going to be held by insiders and institutions who will all be large enough to have to file official news when they sell parts or all of their position. Anyway, how is everyone else feeling about BBIG stock at the moment? Are you still in it for the short squeeze? Are you in it for the longer term after all the acquisitions and mergers go through and the Cryptide spin-off? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, everyone, until next time, may the markets trade in your favour. Cheers.